Hi, good morning everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule to come and see us today. My name's Stuart Hurst. I'm the Managing Director of Converging Data in APAC. And we're very pleased today to have with us Tony Kitzelmann from the Australian Digital Health Agency, who provide the My Health care record system. So I'll hand over to you, Tony. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, everybody, for coming along. My name is Tony Kitzelmann. I'm the General Manager and Chief Information Security Officer for the Australian Digital Health Agency. First of all, we're off and running. First of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for taking the time to come and sit with us. What I want to do is just give you a bit of a walkthrough on the My Health record system, the security that we've put in place, and take you on a bit of our journey around how we operationalise the Security Operations Centre and actually brought forward a product that will secure the national requirements and move us forward to the future requirement. So the presentation is going to be focused specifically on a bit of our landscape, who we are as an agency, what our commitment to security and privacy is, moving through how we built out our roadmap to deliver the service, and then actually how we actually delivered and why we partnered for success for this. Okay, the Australian Digital Health Agency is the system operator for the My Health records system. We currently hold 6 million records for the Australian population, and you would have heard about recent times through the national media campaign that we're moving to an opt-out program where we're going to actually bring on all the health records for all citizens in the country. So our aim is that we'll achieve 25 million records across the platform, noting that at the end of the day this is a consumer record owned by our citizens, and our job as the agency is to make that data that's already there available for health services. One thing you need to know about the My Health records system, and I think it's an important part, that it's actually a citizen-centric system. Each individual has the ability to go in and decide who accesses their data, how that data is then consumed in the real world. They have the ability to put record access controls on there. And one of the things I personally love, and I encourage everybody to do this, is actually set your health record up so that you get a notification on your mobile phone when somebody accesses your record. I went to the doctor's 3 weeks ago. As I was walking out to the car park, I got a text message to say that the doctor had actually updated my record with the clinical data. And that's a really good thing because it proves and shows that the citizens control what happens with their record. Our environment is complex. There's no ifs or buts about it. We're in a multi-vendor environment. We've partnered in the commercial sector because the agency wasn't able to do it alone. We went out and found people who were able to help us on the journey to deliver cost-effective digital health services that would support the agency's charter and support the government's objectives. My operations team is a multi-tiered team. I have colleagues from the National Infrastructure Operator working in there with me. We have specialist advice and cyber people coming in from different parts of government to support it. The My Health records system is a robust product, and it sits in a space that's well protected. And like all good things, our scope is wider than just the My Health record system. We have a whole pile of other terminology systems that are out there. So let's talk about our commitment to security and privacy. Look, first of all, I know everybody's seen what's in the media recently about the My Health record system, that anybody can browse it, that you can just get access to the data. Well, it's factually incorrect. The system is secure. For a healthcare practitioner to jump on and have a look at a record, they need to know the individual's ADHA. They need to be able to do a conformance search. They have to have appropriate encryption certificates on their system, and they have to be registered on our gateway so that we know exactly who they are and where they're coming from, and they get to do a single transaction with the My Health record system, and we're able to track and audit that throughout the life cycle. It is a multi-tiered security system. So for every release we go through independent penetration testing. Last year I spent approximately $740,000 having external advice and testing done on the system to verify that the security was correct. We've got layered security right through, from everything from full encryption across the network, so when data traverses the network it's fully encrypted. It's encrypted at rest, sitting on the servers in the environment, and it's actually completely has the Overwatch service of our security event management tool and all of the functions that you would expect with a product of this size. One good thing to talk about, and people say, well, Tony's up here talking the talk, but it actually actually walk the walk. So every 2 years we go through the IRAP program where we get independent auditors in. This year we scored 96.7% against the Australian Signals Directorate protected standard, 100% on the Essential 8, full cyber resilience, independently tested by the Australian Signals Directorate as well. They came in and did a thorough assessment of the product. And further than that, the controls that we weren't compliant for, that 3 and a bit % that were sitting out there, were some of the shoulds. There were none of the musts that were ever missed off there. And when we actually did our risk assessment, the controls that we didn't get compliance with, because they just weren't practical to do, were all those. So it gives a level of confidence that the system has been validated and tested and built to a way that's appropriate. Security monitoring, you'd expect. We're ingested just today around 154 million events across the infrastructure, and they're driven down into a very comprehensive category and categorization process that's driven from use cases in the real world. Everything, it's great to have the monitoring, but it's no good if you don't have the backup and the processes. Our partner Accenture, who are the national infrastructure at the moment, have worked closely with us to build out a security model that actually makes what we do worthwhile and validates that the investment that we've put in returns what we need. What else can I talk to you about that? Let's just have a look at some of the stuff. So one of the things I'd like to say though, so this presentation we're going to talk about the Security Operations Centre. I've got to say this up front, cyber's a team sport, we've all heard that, but it's important to remember that you've got a partner for success. Whether you partner internally with your IT team, externally with specialist third-party vendors, your outsourced service providers, understand that partnering for success is the most critical thing you do. Set up a national plan to do that, and for that I mean work out who your stakeholders are and invest rapidly into understanding what they can do with you, how they can support you and how you can support them, because everything you do on the journey you should be able to take and move forward with it. We also provide support to the healthcare organisations out there. We see a lot of telemetry across our system, and we get a lot of insight into the threat landscape that's out there. So we're actively sharing that with the digital health sector, the jurisdictions, private health practitioners. We publish 11 guides, or actually we've got 11 guides up on the system at the moment, everything from what to do if you get hit with ransomware right down to how to how to select providing a third-party IT provider to come in and help you manage your healthcare systems. Okay, so let's just talk about what we did to define the outcomes. The first thing we did when we set up our business case, and last year we invested 17.6 million into cybersecurity operations. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of contributions by Australians, and being entrusted with that, we had to make sure that our investment was appropriate. We started out very firstly with, this is their data, what do we do to ensure that they have confidence that their data is looked after appropriately and that they can challenge us if they don't think it has. So as you can, previously spoken about, the record access control that is available on the system allows everybody out there to be informed about what goes on with their data. I like to say this, and I know it's not quite true, but it's close enough. I've got 6 million consumers out there. Every one of them has the potential to be an auditor on the system and contact my branch and say, somebody's accessed my record, I don't think it was appropriate, can you investigate this for me? And they do. Now, not everybody jumps in and takes a proactive approach to managing who accesses their record, because that's their choice as a citizen. But if everybody were, that would be, imagine the amount of people I could have give me confidence in the system that it was being used appropriately. We've obviously, with 154 million events a day through the system, there is no way you can do this manually. You've got to set up automated event monitoring and alerting. At the moment, we're running around about 25 very typical type scenarios that run through. They're evolving 1 or 2 every couple of weeks as new things come up. We've got roughly 70 on our roadmap for development, and these are as we enhance out. And one of the things we're working on this year is around user behaviour analytics, where we can start to look at how is the health record consumed across the entire enterprise, and how can we predict what normal behaviours are and how the product is used and evolve with the changing landscape. Because today we know that the product is out and about on the road. 0.2% of our population travels internationally every day and accesses their My Health record from their mobile phone. That's a good leading indicator for us, because if we've seen it jump up to 0.4%, has Australia just gone on a holiday, or is this something we need to be focusing on? So these are the sort of things that are important to understand the data that you have available to you and drive your data to get that success that you need. Okay, so let's talk about the roadmap. Purely a risk-based approach. It was, what are the risks that we're dealing with? Where do we want to invest our money, and how do we get that into the product and get the security that we need that is appropriate? You can imagine you come to Gartner, you walk around the floor and you can see all of the different vendors and all the products out there. You wouldn't have enough money to spend on everything that could possibly fix your solution. So for us, it was about understanding what can we do, what is appropriate, how much should we invest to secure it, and what are our tolerances with risk, and what are we willing to accept. I don't think there's a person in this room would think that there is such a situation of 100% secure product that's out there that could never be compromised. Our understanding is that the product is at risk, so we have to build a solution that is appropriate for it and defends it, manages it respectfully, but allows us to have 100% insight and understanding into how the My Health record is secured. Some of the things that we did earlier on, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think we got it right when we started our journey, when we built out the Security Operations Centre and our architecture, because we built our architecture, but we didn't look far enough into the future about what we needed to be, and our solution actually quite quickly just didn't have capacity to scale, and we had to go back and re-architect the environment. So take the time to sit down when you're planning about it, work out where you are today, but try and foreshadow where you may be in 2 years' time so that you can plan your architecture appropriately. Make sure that you've got capacity to put in those redundancies between your data centre, that you're not reliant on a single pipe that's feeding data down into your infrastructure, so that you've got that sort of resilience. And don't go doing it alone. There is no way you're going to be able to get this. And this comes back to my conversation about partnerships. Find people who can help you on the journey, and find ways that you can help them on their journey. Because at the end of the day, we're all on the same road together, and that is keeping this system available to provide clinical services for our customers. Won't talk much about risk management. Every single business decision that my team bring to me has to have a risk assessment on it, has to have a project initiation document that outlines the outcomes and what they're going to achieve, and that has to be measured against a value and return for money position. And that's important, because if you don't understand what you're building to and why you're on that journey to achieve that outcome, then you're simply going to fail on this. You've got to take the time to think about it, lay it out, and make sure that you get the level of detail that gives you confidence that your system has been built. Last year, we had an opportunity to invest in behaviour analytics. For the Australian Digital Health Agency, we did a small investment in that space, but spent most of our investment in building out the infrastructure and getting the resilience on the platform so that we could understand what we knew and what the normal environment was. We made a conscious decision that user behaviour analytics is important, but it wasn't as important as getting the infrastructure to the security level needed. So we put that on hold, and we started work on that in this financial year and started to build out the more comprehensive requirements that we wanted to undertake. So look, it's a layered security approach. I think you've all seen these 100 times. We publish our infrastructure guidance out there material. We've got a layered security architecture that moves across, and it literally starts. We integrate our security event management tool right down to the access control system coming into the clean room where all administrative functions are undertaken. We pick up all of the telemetry off our networks. We have multiple boundaries and gateways out there that we interact with consumers, providers, administrators, mobile services, and we bring that data in to give context. We know who's on the system, how they're getting into the system, what they're doing when they get there, when they come on, what their normal profile looks like when they access the system, so that we can build a comprehensive understanding. We know, for example, when the backup cycles will run, we can see the performance changes across the system there. We know when there's a major release on, because we'll be able to predict the activity increase in the sterile clean room where people independently go in and access the system to do those administration functions. The hosts you've heard me talking about before are being built in such a way that they are resilient, that they've got the level of auditing and security compliance on them to make them defensive. And right down to the application. We've got application whitelisting on. The entire product is monitored to the nth degree, so we can see when things occur. We understand when changes are made on the environment. But at the corner, as you can see, the most important part of this is the data. The citizen data is the core, and we started from that point and worked out in the layers to build up a security model that was appropriate. I can't undersell the component of that. It is the most important. It is the only reason we are here. We've been entrusted to look after the data for our Australian citizens. The data lives out in the health ecosystem. Our job is to simply bring that data together and make it available when required for the people for when they need it out there for that clinical health services. We don't own the data, and we're respectful of the fact that we don't own it. We are simply custodians who is our responsibility to make that data available for them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the design and implementation. You guys are sitting there saying, well, what did you choose? This is public record. We work with Splunk and we spend a significant amount of money there on a product that we think is fit for purpose. It gives us the ability to scale. It has a flexibility and elastic design that allows us to change and evolve as the threat landscape. It also connects and brings in the appropriate services. And we also partnered with Converging Data as our preferred technical SME to come in and help us on the journey as the agency. And that was important. That was a decision that we had to make in a very conscious, considerate way, because you're entrusted to spend public money. You've got to do it wisely, and you've got to make sure that your investment is appropriate, that you get those results. And it's no good going out there and spending $1 million on a piece of software, but then not investing to get the outcome you need. Because if you don't get the outcome, then you just wasted $1 million. Because if you only get 10% utilisation, why did you spend $1 million in the first place? Spend the money, do it properly, and get a good outcome. Your return on your investment is the thing. And I've got to say also, and I'll talk about it later on, when you put a security tool in, forget about it being a security tool. Think about it as an analytics tool and a platform, and think about the data that you ingest into your system, and then automatically say to yourself, who else could use this? Could my IT operations people have value on understanding that the gateway is under this level of traffic utilisation at the moment? Could my infrastructure team have an appreciation for the fact that I can actually now see what the CPU utilisation on a particular server is actually doing? Find those use cases, get them out there, get other people consuming the service that you've already brought on board, because that drives adoption and brings benefit to your business as a whole. All right, I'm going to hand over to Stuart for a second to talk about the D8 methodology, because this is his magic sauce, and it gives you a bit of insight into the fact that when we started the journey, we had an ideal of where we wanted to be, but we didn't know how to get there and what we were going to do to move across the line.
Thanks, Tony. So at Converging Data, we have a long track record of delivering Splunk into really quite complex environments. When you're deploying across multiple vendors, multiple data centers and so on, it's important to have a really structured methodology, because very quickly you can build a rat's nest of data and nobody knows where anything came from. So at a glance, the objective is, at a glance, to be able to look at any piece of information and understand where it came from and what it's relative to. Because the people that are sat in the SOC delivering the security services aren't necessarily the same people that onboarded the data into the system. So it's really important that at a glance. And so what we've developed the D8 methodology that focuses on getting data into the system, and this half of this shape here is around the services that help to normalize information and produce standard methods for acquiring information into the Splunk platform. And then the second half of this is about adoption. So how do you get all of those use cases being adopted and people seeing value out of your deployment? So the architecture that we put together had to traverse Accenture and a couple of other data providers as well, and so we had this cookie cutter approach of deploying this consistently across these organizations to bring that data in. It's a federated architecture, so it's a Splunk deployment that has lots of common components and they all work together as a seamless entity. And then we focused on the onboarding of data specific to the use cases. So you start at the right-hand end, follow the risk profiling of the individual use cases, and then onboard the data for those use cases. Please don't start at the left-hand end and onboard all of your data, and then what will happen is you get overwhelmed with all of this information, and it's very difficult to get any value from it. So then once you've onboarded the data, it's then about normalizing that and mapping that to the common information model, so that you can then relate one piece of firewall vendor's activity with another firewall vendor's piece of activity. So bringing those together so that the analyst can see events regardless of which vendor is really key. And then we get into the enablement side of things. So creating the initial playbooks for the response, so that the guys in the SOC that are responding to the events, they have a method and a flow that they follow for each of these individual use cases. And the concept of having suppressed and validated events is really key. So you will be overwhelmed initially. The number of events that you get when you turn on all of the widgets that the various vendor products provide you with, you'll be overwhelmed with the events. So having the ability to have a suppressed list and then allow your analysts to validate those and move them into the validated dashboard is really key. We then tuned a bunch of dashboards for the C-level guys inside of the My Health Record service, so they could see the real-time activity. They can see in real time clinicians accessing patient records. They can see patients accessing their own record. So that provides that real-time space. Thanks, Tony.
Stuart. So now we just want to have a quick talk. So look, we have a lot of stuff going on in the agency. The monitoring systems that we have are just off the scale. There's no way to describe the amount of data coming across and the importance of what we're doing here and getting context to it. The operations folk really can quite easily get overwhelmed with the amount of data going across. So that's the importance around building out those use cases and getting a consistent approach and methodology to it. Because as you can see in the background, it's a never-ending list of things that you can monitor, which are important. How do you take the time to prioritize it and understand what normal is so that you can build out those automated frameworks? Set those journeys when your staff are building out their playbooks. Make sure that they consider the importance of build the playbook to the use case, understand what risks they're trying to address, and then build it out. And that's really will help them and assist them in the journey to actually able to achieve a good security posture that actually helps them on the journey. Like I said, we know when our peak periods are based on our trending. We know where our consumers are accessing the system. We know the types of systems that are connecting to our mobile gateway, because we know the amount of Android devices coming on, the iOS devices out there. We know the profiles that you would expect to see in an environment of this size. And for us, that is just about quantifying those known knowns. So when the unknown pops up and you don't know what it is, you can see the ripple effect across your data, because it won't be easily quantified. And you'll be able to sit there and say, well, this is something of note. I now know where to investigate and focus into. So we wanted to open this up as a bit of a discussion. And I thought before we do it, I'd ask Stuart to tell you about some of the conversations him and I had when we started the journey. And I've got to admit, honest, I don't know how many times Stuart came into my office and called me up and went, Tony, what are you doing, mate? Why are you going down this path? What's your thought structure on this, and where can we go? So I'll get Stuart to talk about his the lessons learned that he had from his side coming in and supporting me in the agency to do it, and then I'll talk about the things that I do differently and maybe your takeaways on it when you deliver your capability out in the environment.
Thanks, Tony. So one of the key things I would advise everybody do is when you're onboarding data across a disparate landscape is have a really structured naming standards. It's that whole at-a-glance thing that the consumers of the information need to understand where it came from and what it's relative to, and having a good naming structure will really help you to do that. Again, the ability to have suppressed and validated events, I think I talked about that earlier on, and being able to centralize configuration, especially when you're dealing across service providers. I know lots of you have lots of different service providers. You need to be able to manage the configurations so that when your analyst needs some more information, you don't need to raise a change request against a provider, wait 7 days before that data becomes available. They need to be able to respond and react in a 30-minute time window to be able to grab that information to continue with the task that they're doing. The next thing I would say is to bake in orchestration. You might not use orchestration from the beginning. It's very unlikely you will, in fact. But use your orchestration toolset to document your processes and have your analysts use that as the guided workflow, and then you can turn on orchestration as you go. And just don't underestimate engaging the stakeholders early. Especially when you've got lots of different providers in lots of different spaces, engage those stakeholders, get them in early, get them signed up to your thinking and your logic, and get everybody on board, and then try and move everybody forward together.
Got to be straight up here. It is a bit of a journey. So one of the things I didn't get right in the beginning was I didn't actually set a really good strategic direction that all of my stakeholders got on board with. I thought that I had the security nous and the expertise just to drive this across the line and get the outcome. The reality is that if you work in a multi-vendor environment, you've got to be doing it hand in hand with them. They know your infrastructure better than you do. They can give you that frank advice and guidance on what you need to do. Invest there. Get those people on board with your journey so that they become part of your enablement process. You've just got to look out for those people that can help you be successful. It's nothing about, I can do it myself. You've got to say, this is what I'm good at and this is what they're good at. How do we support each other to be successful? And it's not about being proud. It's not about anything more than just understanding that we're all in this for the same outcomes. Set clear expectations on what you need to achieve. When I set my expectations and set the guidance and initially put it out there, it did not get the momentum it needed. I had to go back and look back at it and say, well, what would I do better? And then I set very clear guidance on those objectives that could be run to ground quickly that would actually deliver that return on investment. Get in a good methodology-based framework. Take your time to actually put this in a way that will actually guarantee the service is done consistently. Do not let your IT folk fall into that 101 where they're just going to get on with doing stuff. Make everybody come up with why they're doing it. Make them identify the process that they're going to go through. A simple one-page project initiation document on all of those activities will set the foundation when you go back and say, were you successful against that original use case you set 6 months ago? Because they will go off and do stuff every day and you'll spend money and sit and say to yourself, why am I 20% out of budget and I still haven't got this across the line? Set those clear objectives and engage your other stakeholders. If you've got folk out there like your IT operations people, your network operations, your call centres, find out what data you've got that they may be able to use. Is it simply grabbing some analytics off a call centre log and then actually replaying them back to the call centre so they can see what's going on in their environment so they can do a bit of business forecasting? That gets you the buy-in you need. And don't underestimate your IT folk. If you don't get them on board, you're going to be dancing by yourselves and the music would have stopped a long time ago. Keep them engaged and keep them working with you. The last thing I'd say is set achievable goals. With a project as big as this, and we've invested heavily and we're only halfway through our journey at the moment, you've got to have milestones that your folk can run to and that they can feel good about themselves. Last week I sat and watched my operations people chasing an activity across 2 different systems and they were tracking the data moving across and the level of confidence that they raised in there, because you could see them watching the data moving and they were actually seeing those leading indicators slowly show up on the system. It's a good thing, and setting those achievable goals in a project space really helps them on the journey because it keeps the momentum up and keeps them driving successfully forward. So look, I'd like to finish up, if I can, thanks, on some of the key messages that I'd like to leave you with. The My Health Record system is an important piece of Australia's infrastructure. Whether you want a record or not, it's your choice, and it's something I would encourage you to consider. If you have family members getting a My Health Record, tell them to put a record access control on and tell them to set up the notifications. My children all have records, and my daughter mocks me shamelessly about this because she says, yeah, Dad, I know, got the access control set up. But it's important because it's their data. Get it done and take advantage of it. Remember, the data actually lives in the ecosystem right now, right today, across all of the country. We're bringing that data together so it's available when it's needed. So take the time to consider that and the importance of what it can mean to you and your family. The security of the system is the only reason I come to work. I took this job after working for Lockheed Martin for 5 years and I loved my role there. This was my opportunity to give back and look after something that will make a difference. So I encourage you to jump in and open up the floor for any questions that anybody would like to talk about our security journey with the operations centre and where we are today and where we're going.
Thanks, Tony. I am conscious that we have run over time, so does anybody have any questions? Yeah?
Tony, if you were starting this journey again, what would be the number one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
The number one piece of advice I'd have to say is don't think you know all the answers yourself. Take the time to just sit back and say, right, this is my journey, and then just go out and sound that off some other people and get some guidance on it. Go and talk to your partners and those people that have been doing it for a long time and say to them, this is what I want to do. Does this make sense to you? And get that buy-in and understanding of that strategic objective that you need to achieve and understand that it's something that you do together. This one.
Yes.
As a partner to the customer, what would be your question? Would you give training when they can't start again?
Canned question, but anyway, yeah, it's
It's the same question, but
it is, yeah, slightly different. So, I would recommend that when you're deploying across a large community of providers, is make sure that the contracts have the vehicle to acquire data. If you can't acquire the data, you can't see anything. If you can't see anything, you can't manage the security. So make sure that the contracts have baked into them the ability to acquire the information.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.